Evelyn. Hi, everyone. Welcome to this session of Leading Your Business in Crisis. It's a privilege to be invited to share my thoughts and my expertise in this area. As we all know, like any crisis, the coronavirus crisis is changing through the arc of time. And like all crises, there will be the beginning, the middle, and the end. And as our future unfolds, a lot of our business decisions will change the course of our fate to some extent, whether you're an employee or whether you are a business leader. So some companies will survive through this crisis, and unfortunately some will not. And today's seminar would be looking at what do you have to do as a leader to lead your company out of this crisis. So we shall begin the presentation by looking at a 7-minute video very quickly to give you some pointers, and then we'll continue on with the presentation. Hi everyone, my name is Sandy. I'm the Principal Consultant of Verity Consulting. In the next couple of minutes, I'll be sharing with you some ideas and thoughts on how to lead in times of crisis. Over the last couple of weeks and months, we've been receiving a lot of calls and requests from distressed clients on what to do, how to overcome this challenge, and more importantly, what action to take to survive. Are you coping well at the moment as a leader of your firm? Are you reacting to operational turmoil, or are you in the midst of establishing new norms to identify the emerging needs of your clients? Other than focusing on operational efficiency, are there anything else that you are thinking of doing to lead your team through this crisis? Well, today I would like to share 3 essential keys for you when you're leading in the next couple of weeks or even months. Number 1, establish stability and security for your teams. Number 2, show up as a strategic leader. Number 3, think about future opportunities. So to establish stability and security for your teams, it would be a good start by being open and transparent. Talk about what you are doing. Talk about what you're going to do and how you're going to do it and when you're going to do it. More importantly, people are now operating in this time of information overload. They may be getting a lot of conflicting information, they may be confused, they may have doubts. Give them a direction. People are looking for a leader who is flexible, who is agile, and who is accountable. This is also a good time to establish new norms. If you have done things the old way, the usual way, and things have always worked out for you, and this crisis have all brought it down, then it is time for you to look at new ways, new forms, and new platforms to operate. Number 2, show up as a strategic leader. How do you do that in times of crisis when you are overloaded with all sorts of pressing demands from all directions? How do you act strategically when things are changing so fast, when you're trying to cope as much as you can, personally and professionally? Some of the things that I find it really useful are doing meditation or doing exercises that's going to help you focus your mind to think about what worked, what didn't work, what could work well in the future. You need to quiet down your mind, and so do take about 5 minutes a day and try and find that peace internally so that you can see things from a very different perspective. And who knows, you might even find some opportunities out of that. This is also a good time to look into yourself and reflect what areas of personal development you can cultivate as a leader. A lot of times, a lot of people are looking at ideas and directions or even some sort of vision on how to get everyone through this hard time. And as a leader, you can't do that unless your character is tested, unless you know exactly what is the right thing to do, unless you are in touch with your own feelings. It is very human to feel fear, As leaders, we're human, and therefore it is natural to be fearful. But it is also very important to shift that mindset to some things that you can do now, to some things that are positive, that can be constructive. And so it is extremely important, again, to help yourself to focus. And when you can do that, help your teams to do that focusing exercise. And number 3, think about future opportunities. Focus on the needs of your clients, not just their current needs, but also their future needs. Focus on what is their journey now with their perception of life, of daily activities, of desires, and more importantly, forget about the past. Forget about what worked for you in the past. For those people who are relying on your sales executives and your chief executives to travel, to go to meetings, to attend trade shows, all that has changed and is currently changing really fast. So rethink your sales tasks. See how you could reskill them on using more digital platforms. Imagine the customer journey now. Think about their fears and concerns. Think about their emotions. Think about their perception. Every single day presents new outcomes. And with these new outcomes, there are new emerging needs. People are still spending, but they will be a lot more discerning. So if you're really serious about being a customer-centric organization, this is the time now to look at all the gaps that you have in your services and your offerings and see how you can fill these gaps. A lot of companies over the last few weeks and months have shown that they've stepped up to support their clients and to support the community or even a country. So you've got to be genuine with this because people can always tell if you're being dishonest. It is time to also move up as a leader, not just to lead people and show direction, but more importantly, manage this crisis with a positive view by identifying opportunities, by telling people or showing people what action to take. So as a leader, those who manage to thrive during this crisis are those who are able to step out of their comfort zone. They are the ones who are able to show empathy, and they're able to boost morale, not just within their own workforce, but also in the community. And you don't need to have all the answers, like I said before, but you will need all the fortitude and courage to drive these opportunities and growth. Well, I hope you find the ideas and thoughts that I've shared with you the last couple of minutes to be helpful. Feel free to reach out if you have any stories or experiences or any questions that you have, and I look forward to stay connected with you. I hope you find that short segment of video to be helpful, and what we'll do is we'll cover some of those topics along the way, but more in-depth on how to lead during this crisis. So I'll share my screen with you again now with the presentation. Leading in Times of Crisis, presented by Verity Consulting. We're a boutique international marketing and communication company that helps companies to grow internationally since 2009. And we've been helping companies to overcome any sort of challenges that they have when they go into a market. More importantly, how to increase their visibility and, of course, improve their performance when they're looking at export or international growth. And the reason why we are coming out with a series of webinars and participating in this one is because we have a lot of clients and industry peak bodies coming to us, asking us, what can we do for the community and to help companies survive and be more resilient through this hard time. And these are just some of the awards that we won all through the years. And we're very proud of the work that we do. And you're more than welcome to pick our brains after this seminars. Okay, let's begin. As you can see from the video, these are the three things that we covered just now. So as a leader, whether you are a head of a department or a owner of a small firm or a CEO of a large corporation, I think it's extremely important to establish stability and security of your teams, of your operations, of your finance. And I assume that you've done that over the last 2 months. And of course, on a daily basis, information will start coming in and you will need to show up as a strategic leader. I think it is very tempting around this time that people would try to focus on the nitty-gritty things. And so a lot of times during crisis, you see that a lot of people tend to overmanage their operations rather than leading the organization. So it's very overmanaged and underled. So what must you do as a leader to step up and think strategically? And more importantly, if you want to survive, you have to pivot, and you would have to recalibrate a lot of your offerings, a lot of your thinking to future opportunities. And just to like quickly reiterate the fact that, you know, during this really interesting time, studies have proven that a lot of your customers may switch. In fact, as high as 60% of your customers may switch. Why? Because your competitors might already be taking advantage of digital platforms, or they have very streamlined operations. And companies are also looking for cost-effective ways to save money. So this is a really tricky time where people, if they are given that information, if they're given that opportunity, they would change, they would switch to your competitors. This doesn't just apply to your clients, it could also apply to your employees. I know it's really interesting. People are saying, oh, you know, during this hard time, people want to keep their jobs. Already I've seen some people, they quit their jobs unprompted. It wasn't because they were asked to leave. It wasn't because the company wasn't doing well. In fact, some of them are large corporation. It's just that, you know, you have to understand the psychology of crisis. A lot of time, if people are not happy during the good times, during the crisis, people would really think hard about, you know, is there anything I should change? And particularly for employees, the really smart ones, the really good ones, if they see things that are shifting really badly, they might just jump ship. And so you're literally giving your best talent to your competitors. So as a leader, your job is a really challenging one. Not only do you have to manage what's going out there with your partners within the value chain, within your suppliers and your clients. Internally, you've got to stabilize your team just so that they can bring you out of this crisis too, because you can't do it alone. That's a fact. So just thought I ask with this first poll question. I'm just going to allow all of you to have a look at this now. So sorry, just the first question. Right. How are your team doing at the moment? What are some of the challenges that are arising from leading your team throughout the last 2 months? You can hold that thought and you can leave that thought in the Q&A section, but just thought I ask, how are you guys doing at the moment? Whether you're a team leader or you're a owner of a firm. Okay, I see that 23% have voted. There's no passive learning in this webinar, I hope. The more people who respond to this, the faster we can go along. So yes, we're hitting 50%, fantastic. Yeah, we need to have more people responding to this. Okay, right. So majority of you actually said so. That's interesting. Let's see in the next couple of seconds that would change. And obviously majority of you said that you know, you're dealing relatively well. Okay. Yes. Right. We're getting there. What happened to the other 20% of people, I wonder? Okay, let's have a look at this. Right, let's end the poll and I'll share the results with you guys. So I have to say, most people resoundingly said, yes, you're doing so, right? And I think it's a great thing. I think a lot of you are quite optimistic and said you're dealing with it relatively well. You know, there are a small percentage of you that says you're not doing extremely well because you know, for some reason. It could be stress, it could be the fact that there is lack of direction. So those people who are, you know, looking at extremely bad, so that's something that you would probably need to look into. You probably need a lot of support and direction and help. And obviously it's good to know that a number of you are actually quite positive, right? Okay, so let's have a look at this. Let's continue on, let's push on. So it's interesting that all of you are rating yourself according to that scale. So let's have a look at what companies are actually doing now, right? as you can see over the last couple of months, most companies are reacting to the crisis. And what do I mean by reacting? So basically, they're restricting traveling, they are arranging for digital working or working from home arrangement. I bet a lot of you are actually, moving drastically into digital platforms, and you're also maybe setting up some sort of rapid response or crisis response team. That's another thing as well. Does your crisis response team include people from the HR, not just people from the sales or the supply chain, but also, do you have a response team that include a customer or even someone who is a huge supporter of your business in the industry? So this is what companies are more or less doing now. And this is what you need to prepare yourself to get out of the crisis, to rebound, to survive, and to pivot. And here are just some of the things that you can see. Very few companies, or small percentage of companies, are actually looking at reinvestment opportunities or growing your sales into omni channels. You're also probably trying to struggle with what kind of demands you need and how do you manage your supply chain. And so this is what most companies are doing now, when in fact I hope a lot of you over the last maybe 4 weeks are already looking at the activities on your right. And if you have a look at the kind of mindset that you require in order to push through. So I have to say, we're not in the beginning of the crisis, we're right in the middle of those crises, right? And so usually with the middle of this crisis, it is important for us to understand that, look, we cannot take a narrow view anymore. Yeah, we need to take a broader view. It's very natural for the human brain to focus, because our brain tend to program ourselves to look at threat, emergency, urgency, things that we need to do right now, things that we need to firefight. So when in fact you should take a broader, more holistic view. And how do you do that? You can actually talk to people, build networks of team. So build teams that are not just good in sales, but also teams that are actually fully aware of what the customer pain points are. You must also build teams that are very, very connected and with the industry peak bodies. So you just don't know. You might be able to find some sort of contact, some sort of idea, some sort of creative collaboration. That's another thing I wanted to emphasize. Partnership is going to be the way to go out of this. You can already see in China and in the States that companies from very unlikely background are collaborating. And they're collaborating because they identify certain segments of the market having more or less the same behavior, consumption behavior, the same sort of preferences, the same sort of attitude. So see if you can find any of these partners within your value chain that you can collaborate with, right? So just give you a small example. Fenty, which is a makeup company from America, the owner is Rihanna, the very famous American singer. She just launched her makeup untimely in China. But what she did was she was really smart. She paired up with a Chinese tea company. So the target audience are women of a certain age, of a certain sort of aesthetic. And what they did was they collaborated and launched the event probably about 3 weeks ago. Both companies' followers just jumped through the roof overnight. You can also see that in China with the restaurant, during the crisis, the chefs were unable to serve or to cook. So what they did was they were mobilized to move into other cities or into hospitals to cook for those who are in isolation. And as for those delivery team, is the same. What they did was they were then being repurposed to help all the emergency team or to help all those people who are working in the hospital so that the food can be delivered to them on time. And so you see that there's a lot of collaboration, a lot of partnership happening to make sure that these value chain are being repurposed or these value chains are being put to good use. So do keep an eye out. And every now and then, if you really must, you might even want to think of collaborating with your competitors. Number 2, empower others to be leaders. This is something that we can have a look at the next slide, but most of the time you can't go through and you can't come out of crisis by yourself. You would definitely need to empower others to take lead and to take charge. I know in some cultures this can be quite challenging, especially when it's a very conformative society, a very conformative culture. But understand that you won't be able to come out of this alive unless you have champions within your firm, you have champions within your value chain to lead and to help you come up with all sorts of solutions for your problems now. And I cannot emphasize enough, it is so important to make prompt decisions. And to maintain transparency means to be open about how people can access your information. People, when they go onto your website, they shouldn't have to scroll through 6 different links before they can find out what is the right information to collect their products. What kind of measures have you taken to make sure that the products to be delivered are going to be clean, hygienic, and going to be safe for people? And for your employees, what are the information that they need to have in order to access all these knowledge, to access all these data, to make it easier for them to work from home? How are these decisions being made? How are you going to reinvest? How are you going to inform your boards? All these needs to be done in a prompt and open manner. So very quickly, if you have a look at this leadership structure, this is what people think how leadership should be. The person that is leading the whole entire organization with all the units below, and the person on the top should have all the answers, right? When in fact, this should be how, this should be how effective leadership be during a crisis. Okay. As you can see, you see a lot of pockets of leaders in different layers of the organization. Everyone taking some form of accountability, some form of empowerment to come up with solutions. So I'm just going to show you the next graph. According to some researchers in Harvard studies, people, when they go through a crisis, they go through all sorts of psychological sense of security and safety. So I want you to focus on the left-hand side of the column, right? Where you can see that, there's very low urgency. That means during good times, there is no crisis, okay? You have people who are not very happy with their job. They don't feel particularly safe in their job, maybe because of politics, maybe because of stress, and maybe because of lack of direction. So you see the person on the left bottom corner in the apathy zone, right? You probably see some of these people in your company, some of these people in your teams. They don't care, they don't want to care, and they have no intention to, be extremely creative or extremely motivated to come up with a solution. And if you have a look at the guy sitting on the top, who's the comfort zone, well, during zero crisis, this person obviously feel very secure with his job, right? They have high psychological safety, so they're probably very happy with the environment. They go to work, they socialize, they get a pretty good pay, decent pay, and they're happy, right? When you have employees in a comfort zone, it's fantastic, but it may not be the best for them or for your organization, because they are probably not coming up with breakthrough ideas, and breakthrough ideas is what you need at this moment. And let's have a look at the right hand corner or the right hand column of this graph, where you have this really high crisis now, okay, extremely high crisis, and then you have people who don't feel really safe, psychologically. It's quite obvious. A lot of people are feeling this way. You're probably feeling this way yourself. And what does it do to a person when you are in this kind of situation? Well, a lot of people will feel very anxious. They feel that there is no sense of security. They may lose their job, or they may lose a client. They may lose confidence of the shareholders. And what do? Well, they lash out, right? They tend to let fear take over. And fear is a very human thing. So what they do is they start blaming people. They start putting their head down in the sand. They start acting passive aggressively. And they start getting very agitated, right? And it's not a good situation to be in, because studies have proven, people just can't be creative, and therefore they can't provide solution for any sort of problems and challenges that you have when you're anxious, right? So as a manager or as an owner, your job is really to encourage and move and nudge people to the problem-solving zone, which is on the top right-hand corner. In the problem-solving zone, that's where people feel, despite the fact that you're in high crisis, you still feel psychologically safe and you thrive. In fact, 14%, I mean, according to a study, 14% of organizations actually did really well after crisis, and this include after the war, 2009 global economic crisis, and so on. In fact, companies like Uber, what do you call it, Airbnb, and a few other firms, in fact, did really well after the crisis. Why? Because during crisis, people are forced to think really strategically because they have limited resources. And when you have limited resources, you have to be very calculated with what you do, how much you spend. And so this is where people can be extremely creative. And this is exactly where you want to put people in. You want to encourage them, you want to empower them, and you want to make them feel safe to talk about ideas. And this is the time where you can afford to be creative and you can afford to be innovative. Okay, so in a normal situation, right, most companies would think, well, we have a hierarchical situation, we have a very centralized leadership, everything is kind of tight, we have policies, we have guidelines, and so on. But in a crisis like this, you've got to understand that those policies and procedures are fine. Just trust them that they will work. And the rest of it, you just got to be more flexible. You got to be more fluid. You got to afford people to make mistakes, provided they're not monumental. And you got to make sure you don't micromanage. So how do you step up as a strategic leader? So here's another polling question for you. Okay, so I'm going to launch this. How long do you think this crisis will last? Okay, some of you said no idea at all. Okay, some of you said, okay, it could be over a month, right? How long do you think the crisis will last? I mean, just think about this, right? Every single day, you would have people coming through, you would have people telling you new information, you would have people saying, can you make this decision, right? And as a leader, do you wait and see? Or do you make quick decision? And then if you make a mistake, you quickly, recover from that, or you just don't do anything, right? That's interesting. So 70% of you have voted. I wonder what the other 30% are doing. Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay, so I'm just going to end the poll and so that everyone can see the results. So majority of you, at least you guys are very realistic. Yesterday we had a webinar and actually a couple of people actually said that, yes, it will be over in a week. Being overly optimistic is actually not a good thing, but it's important to stay optimistic. And I think, a small percentage of you guys said the crisis will be over in a month's time. Okay, so that's quite optimistic. But I have to say, majority of you said no idea at all, right? So it's important for you to see this because, imagine the shoes of your leader, or imagine, the shoes of your CEO, right? Based on the information that they're given, what kind of decision do they have to make? So studies have also proven recently, there's another study by PwC, they said that 41% of leaders and directors or CEOs are not getting the kind of information that they need. They really struggle getting all the right information. Why? Because we have information overload. You have information from the government, you have information from what's happening in the market, and then you also have information from your own internal teams. So it's extremely difficult to filter all these information. And because of the lack of information or the too much information coming through and not knowing how to make out of these information, 40%, another 40% of these owners were unable to make timely decisions. Okay, so as a leader, it is so important for you to understand that you have to stay calm. You got to exude confidence, not arrogance, confidence. And I cannot emphasize enough, communication is so important during good times. It is 6 times more important, 10 times more important during crisis. There's a difference between communicating and communicating effectively. It is a skill that needs to be learned. So if you don't have that skill, that is okay. You have comms directors, you have communication experts out there that you can tap on to learn how to communicate effectively. People were saying that during good times, a message needs to be repeated 3 times for people to remember. During a crisis, it's 6 times, right? Because your workers are not in the office, they're not in the pantry, they're not socializing, people are not reminding them on a frequent basis face to face. So you have to make sure that you have a structure set up from 9 to 5 in a day, and make sure that the messages that are important needs to be sent to people and needs to be obvious to people on a regular basis. And of course, people can't work in isolation, so collaboration is extremely important. And I think this sense of purpose and compassion is so important. I'm not kidding you. A lot of companies are trying to stay alive, but the ones who are doing extremely well are the ones with a very strong community sense. Why? Because people are very sensitive at the moment, and if you're trying to do a hard sell, people are going to just see that as a bad taste. So the only thing you can do, unless you're a primary supplier or provider for the emergency, your job is really to support the community. And remember, your employees are also very observant during this time of your leadership. So whether your clients, your suppliers, or your employees, if you are able to earn their trust, and if you're able to earn their loyalty during this hard time, when the times are back to normal, they will stay with you, because they see your true character of how you lead the company. And of course, without further explanation, cash is so important. So cash is king. Make sure that you're financially solvent, and make sure that you manage to move things around to ensure that you keep your finance strong and healthy, because you need that to survive. So as you can see from the screen, on the left is where people feel instinctively what to do when they face uncertainty, right? You want to wait for more information. So this is another thing. When people ask most people, where do you get your information from, right? Most people are still referring to their companies for information, followed by government, and then the media. It's really interesting. Why? Because human beings spend so much time at work. And so as a company or as a leader, you have a responsibility, and you also have this opportunity to lead people out of this, right? So it's not just about feeling empathy for others and understanding what people are suffering, but it is also important to think intelligently, and then use your position of authority to make a path for all your employees and for all your customers, right? So what is really needed is you need to act with urgency, you need to communicate, you need to take responsibility, but more importantly, you need to update incessantly. So yesterday we had a seminar on crisis communication. So how often should people communicate? So very quickly, I thought I mentioned this to you. Internally, as often as you can, please. Externally, especially when it comes to promoting your business or promoting your services, once a week is enough, right? And make sure it is not overt marketing. Just please remember that, because it's been seen as very bad taste when you try to sell during this crisis. So I think you still need to generate revenue, you still need to stay afloat and financially healthy, but you need to do this delicately, okay? And so how do you actually cultivate a strategic mindset? It's pretty easy. Being in one of these webinars and being in, as a member of the Singapore Chinese Chamber of Commerce and Industries and all the other peak bodies industry is a very good way of learning from other leaders from other industries. Connecting with people with more or less the same sort of challenges, same sort of values that can bring you out of this crisis. I think it's, as I mentioned before during the video, I like meditation. For some other people, you like to exercise, but I think it's extremely important to not do the busy fool thing and maintain focus, think strategically. So work out a way to give yourself about 10 to 20 minutes a day, at least, to reflect and also to envision where you want your company to be when this whole entire crisis is over, right? What sort of aspiration do you have? And is it consistent with your longer term vision? So I think this is so important. So take time to imagine how you want to see this whole thing be resolved. How do you want to come out of this? Not just alive, but thriving, right? And it's also a really good time to reflect on what are your blind spots within your firm, within yourself. What can you do to improve yourself? And I think taking part in webinars like this is a very good reflection of the fact that you want to improve. You're finding solutions, you're trying to think of ideas. And so in the next couple of months, whether the government would allow us to start opening our business, and even if we are doing that, you see that the consumption behavior is going to be slow. It will take a while for people to feel more confident and more comfortable to socialize again, to be in places where there are lots of people. So again, in order to shift your mindset towards opportunity, you have to stand in the shoes of your customers, right? Reimagining your customer's journey is such an important exercise. There must be people within your companies whom we call the customer geek or the customer champion. So, identify these people, get these people to be on your future opportunity team. So you can have a crisis response team, you can have a future opportunity team, right? And the team, what they do is they think of everything that they can to look at opportunities in the future. But obviously you can't do that unless you identify some of the pain points that your customers is experiencing now. So if times are good, a lot of customers might just put out these pain points. But like I said, people are cutting costs, people are looking at excuses to switch brands. So this is the time where you have to really identify, are there any ways where we can get our clients onto our digital platforms? Can we get information from our clients so that we can improve our process? Is there any way where we can actually better engage our customers? And then do a reverse engineering. Once you're able to do that, then it's more realistic because you then put the time and the dollars in it. What do I have to do to satisfy this particular group of customers, right? What technology do I have to invest? How should I repurpose or reskill my team? How do I retrain them, right? And as we all know, when we experience such a huge global crisis, people's behavior, people's purchasing, preferences change. And because of this whole entire crisis, there will be a whole new emerging group of needs. Okay, and so you might even tap into customer segments that you've never tapped before. So this is a time where you really need that team, that future opportunity team, to look at identifying them, studying their behavior like as if they are brand new customers, brand new markets, and gear your operations and gear your supply chain management towards that. And I think it's extremely important to understand that, we want to move as quickly as possible. So it is important for you to have midterm and long-term goals, and that you also have to rally your team and make sure that they understand your vision and say, look, there are going to be sacrifices, but we are moving towards something new. We're moving towards something different. So please join on this journey with us. So this is what you can do to establish future vision. Right, as I mentioned before, during your personal meditation time or when you have a regrouping at the end of the day, spend time, imagining the future and think about what do you want to do? How can you better support each other? Are there anyone within the value chain you can partner up with? All these ideas that your customers come to you, or the people in the front line, your customer service people, what kind of trends are they observing? Can they feedback to your team? Develop the strategy and then figure out how do you actually realize all those opportunities, and be really humble and admit the fact that, look, you don't have all the answers, but you're willing to trial and error, right? Like I said, during the crisis, we're not in the management logic anymore. We are going to move towards the innovation logic, okay? Because if you can't innovate and if you can't come up with creative ideas to solve these problems, it will be very difficult for you to survive. And we're starting to see a lot of that happening in the industry. Yeah, companies that obviously were just hanging by the thread, now they've been disrupted by this crisis. And so if you don't disrupt yourself, you're going to be disrupted, monumentally. And to get people on your team and to see the vision that you have, you've got to be an open leader. You got to be an understanding leader. You also got to be a leader that is willing to act. Yeah, so you got to put the money where the mouth is. So if you said you really care about the community, you would like to re-gear your services and your products to serve a bigger purpose, then you make sure that you have those plans, because otherwise people will think that this is just another hollow promise. And why is thinking for the community? Why is having a shared purpose so important? Well, people get paid 9 to 5, they go to work and then they go home. They don't really care. But if, say, for example, you're able to rally people up to say, look, we're serving a bigger vision here. We're trying to provide services to people, or, you know, what we're doing with this technology is going to change the world. So again, you know, never underestimate the purpose that you will be bringing to people's life. So, you know, some people are happy to do 9 to 5, but there's also a lot of people who are willing to go above and beyond their duty because they believe in the leader or they believe in the vision, right? So this is more important than ever because of this crisis. People are reflecting. Remember what we were saying before, with you know, their current status, whether what they're doing is actually good, you know, all the things that we're consuming, is it healthy, and all that. So, you know, people are reflecting, going through this period of reflection. So it is important to understand that. And so that concludes that segment of the webinar. But I thought I asked this final question in the poll before we go into the Q&A, is this question: how do you rate your level of readiness towards opportunities after the crisis? Very high, relatively high, moderate, or relatively low? Can anyone see this this survey? Okay. So the reason why I'm asking you this question mainly is because you have gone through the last 3 months, 2 months of all sorts of crises, right? Think about some of these things that have changed within your firm. Okay, think about some of these things that you've changed within your firm, either operation or your marketing, or, you know, the way you manufacture your products, the way you deliver the products. Are there any of these things that you've changed that you would like to keep even after the crisis? Okay, so I bet there must be some. So feel free to put that in your Q&A and make some comments. But the idea is, how would you rate the level of readiness for you, right? Once this whole entire crisis is over, do you think that there will be lots of opportunities? Do you think that there's very little opportunities? Are you unsure? Or do you feel like, okay, you know, I just need a little bit more information before I make any decision? You'd like to wait and see, okay? So how do you rate your level of readiness? Right, brilliant. Okay, so let's share the results. Well, I have to say, most of you said moderate. Okay, I wonder, you know, why some of you actually said relatively high, relatively low, very high, very low. I'd love to hear from all of you, you know, why you think it's, you know, the opportunity is going to be very high, why you think it's very low, and the moderate ones, those are very interesting. And of course, the unsure, that's really interesting. Why are you unsure of the future? Yeah, is there anything you can do to clarify that? So as part of this whole entire exercise of getting people to think about, you know, what should you do as a leader? How can you gear yourself up for the future? How do you actually prep your team and all that? You're more than welcome to take advantage of this. And again, this is only extended to those people who attend the seminar. So it's only entitled to one company per person, one company per session, and it will be between 15 to half an hour. You're welcome to drop us an email at the end of this if you would like to pick our brains and ask us about anything relating to leadership. And of course, for those companies who are looking at getting grants from the government is giving out all these grants, and during the normal times the subsidy is about 70%, and now because of this crisis, a lot of these subsidies are going to be stepped up to 80% or 90%. If you are in the highly stressed segment, so tourism, airline, or, you know, F&B. So our area of expertise really is in international expansion and international growth. And so, you know, we have a good track record of 100% acceptance rate. So if anyone wants to pick our brains and take advantage of any of these grants, feel free to contact us. And here are just some of the upcoming webinars. If you are interested, you can leave your contact details upon exit or drop us an email so that we'll put you in our newsletter and in our mailing list. And we have webinars, you'll be notified of this. And of course, some of these webinars will be interviewing some experts from Canada, from Philippines, from Geneva. Yesterday we had one person, she was the journalist and producer for BBC, and she was a communication director for the Interparliamentary Union, and she basically talked about effective communication during crisis. So that was very interesting. And then of course we had someone from Canada looking at using the Lego idea of doing design thinking, and how do you create and how do you actually cultivate creativity during a crisis, right? Because being innovative and creative is so important. I thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take on any sort of questions for the next couple of minutes.
Thank you, Dr. Chong. So if the audience has any question you'd like to ask, please type it into the Q&A box now. So while everyone is typing, maybe we can start off with one of the questions that was posted earlier on strategic leadership. SMEs are already very lean. So how do you see leadership can be addressed, and how flexible does strategy needs to be in this time of crisis?
Okay, I'll address that question about SMEs are already very lean. Yeah. Do you still see leadership? Can leadership still be addressed? Of course. Even if you're leading a 2-people team, people would jump over the hoops. People would do a lot of things for you if they believe that you're a good leader, right? And how are you a good leader? You're not just someone who's kind and compassionate, but someone who is actually very strategic in your thinking and who knows how to direct your employees to what to do next. Because again, a lot of us are actually looking for directions. And during a crisis, people tend to panic. And when people panic, they tend to just get really paralyzed. They don't know what to do. And so I think it's important to understand, even as an individual, right? I'm sure if you have a household, if you have a family with kids and parents, you do have to exercise that negotiation skill. You do have to exercise that really critical decision skills as well, like, making hard decisions during hard times. How do you persuade people? How do you make people jump on board and believe in your vision and work hard for you? I think this is really important because we are all so stressed out at the moment. And therefore, in order to tide us over, it needs to be more than just money, right? So just thought I ask, can everyone see me? Okay, I'll just enable the video. Okay, great, fantastic. Okay, so what was the second part of that question?
How flexible does strategy need to be in times of crisis?
Very flexible. You have to be flexible. So as I mentioned before, you have your organizational structure, you have your policies and procedures. Okay, the policies and procedures, trust them, they will work. Then everything else, you've got to be very flexible and beware of bureaucracy, because bureaucracy kills creativity. Bureaucracy also kills things from moving along fast. As I mentioned before, 40% of world leaders, including corporations and so on, are unable to make right decisions, mainly because they're not getting the right information. And the reason why people are not getting the right information is because people are afraid to stick out, they're afraid to stand out. You must always remember, it's very human nature, even during crisis. Impression management is on top of our head. Okay, so as a leader, you don't want to look stupid in front of anyone. It's the same thing. Your employees don't want to look stupid in front of you, in front of their peers, in front of their colleagues. So people might not want to talk. They might not want to speak out. And so as a leader, you are in this desperation zone where you really need any idea, right? Some ideas, right? To improve your process, to attract customers, to keep your customers. So you got to encourage people to speak their thoughts. And in order to do that, you got to give them this sense of, security, that they will not be punished, they will not be laughed at, they will not be criticized, and that you will take every idea into consideration, and that you take on this constructively. I think that is very important, to have that culture of optimism, that culture of support for one another, not just attacking each other. Yeah. What other questions do we have?
There's a number of questions regarding the management of remote teams. Firstly, how do you get your leaders buy-in that you need remote working? And secondly is, how do you manage them, especially if they are overseas?
Okay, so we actually did a webinar on managing international teams remotely. So this is a very interesting question. It's not a matter of how do you persuade the company to have a remote team. It's like you have to have it, otherwise you can't survive. You just simply can't survive. And obviously there are many challenges when you transit into a remote working team. So first of all, you got to understand, not everyone has the luxury of having a room to themselves. having a computer in front of them. So first of all, as a company, you got to provide them the equipment and technology, and the space as well. Do they have a space at home where they can do this, where they are not going to feel embarrassed, where their grandparents are going to walk at the back, the kids are going to cry, the dogs are going to bark? So people are conscious of that, right? Again, impression management. They might mute the video, or they might shut the video down, not because they are not active, but because they're embarrassed about their situation. So you got to be sensitive of that. And then number two, on top of managing remote teams, you have managing international remote teams. So a lot of cross-cultural differences. Yeah, as Asians, a lot is unsaid, and a lot is unsaid. Very little is said. So how do you actually observe when someone is not comfortable? How do you ensure everyone participate during a meeting? So in some cases, what really worked for some of our clients is that when you have a webinar or when you have a meeting, an teleconference meeting, you make sure that everyone's opinion and everyone's thought is taken into consideration. There is no such thing as a passive attendee, because it's very natural, right? When a person walks into a cinema, they would just sit there, fold their hand, because they know that they're not required to participate. Okay, it's the same thing when a person goes to a meeting, they sit back and they don't participate. And so you're not getting the most out of people. But if you give them a task and you say, okay, at this meeting, I would like everyone to comment on this specific question or this specific challenge. And everyone, it doesn't matter their ranking, it doesn't matter where they're coming from, which department, if they have to contribute, then you are going to get a good pool of comments and reflection. And as a leader, you can then use that as a way forward to come up with solutions. So encouraging people to talk and encouraging people to speak is so important. Did I answer that question with regards to remote team working? So you got to make sure that you give people the right equipment, you consider people's time, what time are they most productive, but I think you need to check in on people 2 times or 3 times a day, right? You can do like a virtual coffee in the morning, and then virtual lunch in the afternoon, and then another virtual catch up at the end, just so that everyone is on the same page. And of course, there are many things that you can do because we actually covered a whole webinar on that. But I think it is important to get your team used to the idea. So this is another thing. If you say, oh, let's just wait, maybe things might get better, then people will just wait and see, and they have no incentive to change. But if you tell people like, look, things are not going to be the same, all right? Whether you like it or not, we do have to get used to this format of working. In fact, it's going to be more efficient. It's going to be more productive. Let's try this out. And as for those bosses who are worried about work from home, time and time again, studies have proven that when you do it right, productivity doesn't go down. In fact, it maintains or even go up. So, I met a Japanese company. Impax is a large oil and gas company, the largest oil and gas investment firm in Australia. And in March, this was right in the beginning of the crisis, they were thinking like, we've always had difficulty retaining women in our workforce, right? After they've given birth to babies, or, first of all, it's hard to attract them, then it's hard to promote them, and then it's hard to retain them. So they were thinking, because of this crisis, they're going to try the work from home format. And guess what? They tried it and it worked. Apparently, the productivity actually went up. Women are very keen in making, a contribution to their company. And so the boss was saying, the VP was saying, you know what, maybe after this, we might even try this out for women, because the productivity didn't drop. In fact, I don't know about all of you, but I'm working a lot longer hours since the work from home. So this is another thing. Please take care of yourself. Yeah, it is very likely for you to get yourself overstressed, and then learning new technology, re-gearing your brain to this new way of working. So do take care of yourself. Do take care of employees. Be kind to yourself and be kind to others. Yeah. What other questions do you have? So I see Very Passively in Singapore has made a decision to move businesses to Shanghai in Q3. What would you suggest to do? I don't know what's the context of that. So you're saying that the company is closing the team and going to Shanghai and moving it to Shanghai? I'm not sure what that question meant.
Maybe it's about whether they should move their businesses from Singapore over to overseas market.
So this is the thing, right? During this hard time, a lot of decisions are going to be accelerated. So things that you were just sitting on it, you weren't sure during the good times, you see a lot of companies doing all that now. I do also want to emphasize the fact that, you know, this is the time where you can have that difficult conversation with that difficult client or with that difficult employee. This is not a good time to use this crisis as a way to fire people, right? If you have the conversation with the person, or if you have the conversation with the client, and you know, try to find out what are their pain points, trying to find out what are their frustration. If you think this is worthwhile investing, repurposing them, you know, re-skilling them, retraining them, sure, great. I think everyone wants to keep their job at the moment, so they will do everything they can to contribute. But if, say, for example, you know that this is a lost case and you're going to waste a lot of money trying to keep this person or keep this particular client, then maybe it's time to let go, right? You just don't have that time to waste, because again, you know, we have very limited resources, yeah, and you can only do so much. Here's another question. I don't know whether my customers are going to invest in training and development after the crisis. I'm a corporate trainer, and the first expense to get chopped is training budget. How do I look at this? Okay, this is really interesting. Actually, we have a training and advisory branch, and we also have a consultancy branch to our business. During crisis, and we've done this during crisis in 2009, our training and advisory actually go up. So again, it may not apply to everyone, but I'm just saying, during a crisis like this, you know, I don't know, maybe the sustainability department may get cut, right? So the sustainability department may just complain, oh, we're always the first to get cut. And it's the same thing in public sector, you know, arts, you know, they're always the first to go. But, you know, it's really depend on how you sell and how you pitch yourself. You know, during crisis, there will be a lot of cost savings, right? And so instead of doing consultancy, instead of investing in consultancy projects, a lot of clients would like to invest in training and advisory, because then they want to learn how to do it themselves. Money is an issue, and therefore usually training and advisory is a fraction of a consultancy project. So depending on how you project yourself, and depending on how you sell your service and how you articulate those unique selling points, I think it is possible to do better than worse. So again, I don't know what kind of training service you provide, so it's really hard for me to advise you. But I think it is extremely important to understand, what are your customers thinking at the moment? What are their challenges? And does any of the suite of services and products that you're selling meet those? And if, say, for example, during good times, all that service package is too big and too chunky for people, have you thought of breaking it up? Have you thought of repackaging them, right? Making them into bite-sized pieces, and have you ever thought of you know, restructuring the payment structure, right? Making it more affordable, making it a lot less strain on your customers' cash flow, right? Okay, as leader should be more in coaching rather than instructing, but subordinates feel they need to guide them, so you need to train them. Okay, there's a multiple thing going on there. It is true, as a leader, your job is not to handhold them. And in fact, you know, studies have proven when you tell them too much what to do, when you micromanage, people just get paralyzed, and they really can't feel empowered at what they do. And this is horrible during a crisis. So as a leader, your job is to articulate, like I said, the strategic part of things, which is the vision. You know, lead with passion, lead with purpose, and then when you take care of your people, people will take care of your business. This is a fact. Time and time again, you see that through 9/11 crisis, you see that through the global economic crisis. You see that there are leaders who are there for their employees. They don't just talk, they actually do. And when employees feel that, hey, this is a worthwhile leader to follow, they will just do whatever it takes to be loyal, right? So how should you train them? Well, you can't train people to be loyal. You can show people what loyalty looks like, you know, like the way you serve your clients, the way you serve your partners within the value chain. And of course, if you're looking at a slightly more technical part of how do you train people to be leaders, then send them to a webinar like this. You know, let them understand the journey that you're going through. Let them understand, you know, what it takes to be a leader, right? It's not that simple. I think everyone is a critic. Everyone can, you know, say, oh, this leader should have done this way in this crisis, that leader should have done it this way. But everyone is a critic, So I think it's important to get them to understand these are your challenges. Sometimes a lot of it has got to do with communicating the why. Okay, it might be a common sense to you, it might be common sense to me, but if you fail to describe the whys and explain the whys to your employees, to your customers, then you're gonna lose them. They're gonna think, oh, this guy is just imposing more and more demands on me. I don't understand why he's doing that. So sometimes a bit of education is important to get your team on the same page. Yes, yes. Yes, happy to put you on future webinars. The current crisis has put significant level of stress to cash flow. That is true. Although the government has given wages subsidies for 2 months, companies will still have cash flow issues later. Exactly. I totally agree. This in turn affects the morale of the employees as they will worry whether the company can continue to operate. After all, the basic need will need to be fulfilled first in this situation. And how should the management rally the team? So understand that there are 3 parts to this crisis. In the beginning, people are confused, right? So as a leader, your job is to give clear information, give consistent information, and to assure people. And then you have the middle part. Okay, middle part is where people are getting really tired, people are getting very stressed, people are getting a little bit, like, when is this going to end? And they're asking you, what are you going to do? And as a leader, you're looking at the government to give you some sort of indicator how things are going to go back to normal. And then you have the end part, right? The end part is where people need to understand that we need to be creative. This is the part where we rebound, right? We're not there yet. We're in the middle part now. So the middle part is where resilience is so important. Yeah, resilience is where you tell people, look, this is going to be the new norm. Okay, this is going to be it. I would like to keep all your jobs. I would like all of you to continue on, through this journey. But this is the part where it's really exhausting, really tired. I bet all of you, all the men in this group, you've been through the national service, right? So through your military training, you would understand that my father was in the military. So, this is the part where you are really tired, you're thirsty, you want to go home, you start to blame your teammates. And it's very typical human nature. And it doesn't matter what you want, and it doesn't matter what you think you can do. At the end of the day, if you can't if you can't be resilient, you're going to start acting selfishly, like all humans. Yeah, including your client, including yourself, including your employees. So this is the part where you really need to drive on the vision, on the shared purpose. We're doing this for a bigger purpose than ourselves, for a bigger purpose than our cash flow, or anything. So the government is helping a lot, and I have to say the Singapore government is doing a fantastic job supporting the businesses. Seriously. And I've been working in Europe, in US, I'm here now in Australia. I can see and I can compare. But again, it's just a band-aid. It's only there to help you, but the government is also trying to get you guys to think a little bit about the future, because this is just temporary, right? And if you haven't got a plan yet by now, how you want to take on these opportunities, what emerging needs are there in the market, then you're going to have a real trouble when all this is over. So don't put your head in the sand, right? Step up, start asking questions. You don't always have to have all the answers. So that's another thing about being a leader. You might want to have this round table, right? You might want to include your best customers, your best partner in your value chain. Put them in this round table and ask them, what's the situation? Okay, what should you do? What can you do to tide this over? What can you do to generate revenue? What can you do to invest? So this is the part where you have to be completely honest about yourself, where you're at. And the earlier you tell people that this is going to be the new norm, the more people will adjust. So there was another case study I read about this naval officer. They were telling people, okay, help is on the way, and they were freezing in the water. The ship had sunk, and if people keep thinking that, oh, the ship is coming, and then the ship didn't come, or they had to wait longer, then they would just die. But when you tell people that, look, the ship may come, the ship may not come, the rescue may come, the rescue may not come, but you have to survive. You have to learn how to survive. When you level it with people that way, people just kind of like, okay, I want to survive. I have to. Yeah. And so they will do whatever it takes to help you because they know that their job is relying on your survival too. So I think it is extremely important to be absolutely open. So there was a case where this German CEO will come to Singapore, and this is during the global economic crisis in 2009. And what they did was they told the employees and said, look, I want to keep everyone's job. I really needed everyone to help us tide this over. But in 3 months' time, if we don't come up with a solution, in 3 months' time, if we have nothing innovative to offer to our customers, 50% of you would have to be retrenched. Okay, so and that cannot be done through your HR. Okay, because again, rumors would spread around and people will start feeling fear, and your best employees are going to take this as an opportunity to just jump ship. No, that's not what you want. Okay, and so this has to come from the horse mouth. So as a leader, this is where you need to be extremely clear. You say it once, you say it very clear, and you get everyone to ask you any questions if they have any. Okay, so once that is clear, then you can then move forward. Hopefully I answered that question. In the context of a construction company with clients pulling out from contracts, considering delaying projects by a year further due to the pandemic, how should a company maneuver through this period with an expected zero growth for Q2 and Q3? I think this is where you really need to secure your cash flow. Yeah, and also look at, again, I don't know the in-depth situation of a business, but if you had any sort of investment, this is also a good time to be exceptionally calculated with your investment. I think cash flow is going to be extremely important. So I would say keep your cash flow, maintain that solvency, and then look into investment. And during this time, again, this Chinese company, during the whole pandemic time, during the lockdown on their factories, what they did was they used this downtime to look into innovation. So this automobile company, what they did was they get their employees to come up with really interesting ideas on how do you have a no-touch way of entering the car, no-touch way of operating, all the system within the car. So again, you're probably not a tech company, but all these beautiful ideas or really crazy ideas that you've always thought of, but you never had the chance or never had the time to explore. Maybe this is the time for you to think, to say, okay, let's put together a future opportunity team and let's get them to see if there are any innovative way to either streamline the process of construction or streamline the logistics or streamline whatever. So innovation doesn't have to be a big brain idea. It could be tiny incremental changes within your existing process or your operation. Okay, hopefully I can, hopefully that's a, yes, fantastic, thank you. Okay, someone asked about the US election, about any great impact here. I think I would say watch the American election. For anyone who invests in any stocks, bonds, and so on, you can always see every election you see a trend. and if you're in a medical equipment or pharmaceutical companies, even in Singapore, our prices for medicine is pegged against the American dollars and also pegged against the prices of the pharmaceutical products in America. So I think do watch. I mean, do keep an eye on this election, because obviously America is one of the largest trading partner in the world. They invest in so many countries, and in Australia, they are our largest investment partner. So whatever they do is going to have a huge impact on our economy. And I would think it's the same in Singapore. Although I would say out of this crisis, given the current trends that I'm looking, Asia seems to be rebounding a lot better than Europe or America. But again, I'm not, I can't look into the crystal glass. I can't tell you what's going to happen in the future. But looking at the trends and looking at the customer confidence, there are a lot of studies out there that measures consumer behaviors and so on. It seems like Asia have a slightly better confidence than all the other countries. So being in Asia, we should really take advantage of that, right? And I think, yeah, China is doing extremely well. What other things? What other questions do we have? So
there's two questions in the chat box.
Oh, I see. Okay, yeah.
So one of them is brick and mortar business services like hair salons, beauty salons, nail spas. Businesses that require the personal interaction, what would be the
Yes.
top 3 strategic recommendations when they are considering pivoting their business? What would be your advice to them when it comes to digitizing their business?
Okay, so this move to a little bit more in the area of consumer behavior. So people can't go to the salon, but what do they buy? Right? I for one know what I buy. Okay, so I have this hairdresser that I go to for 20 years in Singapore, and I can't access her. I'm in dire straits. So what do? I'll be looking for hair cutting tips. I'll be looking at buying hair care products. I'll be trying to. So as a company, I assume you have stocks. So one way by doing that is by selling these stocks to your loyal customers. Second thing of keeping that engagement with your customers, just because you're no longer opening up as a shop, you can always take advantage of the YouTube channels, your WeChats. The Chinese are very good at that. So during the crisis, a lot of these cosmetic companies couldn't sell their products because people wouldn't come into their shop and try out the makeup. So what do? They get their salespeople to be influencers on WeChat. So they get they get their makeup artists, they get their salespeople to do a video of their makeup at home. Say this is what I use, this is what I do. For any interest on any of these products, visit this link. So it just kind of exploded crazy. And I understand hair care products, or even like hairdressing service is very different, but still, if you want to, you need to maintain the top of mind. Okay, so even if people can't come in and consume your services, it's so important that they still remember your name, they still remember your business. So you can talk a little bit about your story, what you're doing at home. You can give people haircut tips. You can show people what products to use. You got to personalize and humanize this, right? Don't just keep sending people texts like, oh, free haircut for whatever, or discount. People are not interested in that. If you look at all the trends on the internet now, people are looking for 3 key information. Number 1, information about the COVID crisis. Number 2, information that can give them a bit of joy. They want to learn something. They want to learn how to cook at home. They want to learn how to cut their hair at home. They want to learn how to do their makeup at home. And number 3, inspirational things. So, things that could lift their hope up. So there was a property company in Switzerland, for example. We had this interview with another expert, and she was saying, she went to the website just to see how people are doing. Who's going to visit houses? Who's going to visit properties at this time? So what this property company did was really smart. They had a slogan. It said, your dream, your dream home could wait, right? But your dreams don't have to wait. You can always you can always encourage people to think about their future, because that's exactly what everyone is doing. They're all fantasizing about when is the next time they meet their parents, they can have that steamboat, so you can paint a picture about the future and get people to think all the nice things, all the wonderful things. And so, that's a very good slogan, because it gives people this sense of optimism. It makes people think of the future. It makes people remember that your company is associated with optimism and positive future. So that's something that you can do as a hairdresser. There's so many things that you can do. So you just, if you feel really conscious of yourself, then get one of your salespeople to do these channels and promote it online. I think a lot of people would love to learn how to cut their hair. I, for one, would love how to learn how to cut my hair. Okay. What other questions do we have?
You've partially answered this question. How do you think communicating with corporate customers will evolve after this crisis? How can we be more effective than before?
Are you talking about B2B?
Corporate customers, yes, I think it would be.
Yeah, B2B. Okay, so you have B2C clients and you have B2B clients. They communicate, they receive information very differently, and they make their decisions very differently. All right. For B2C clients, they don't want to have any regret in buying any sort of products, because it's associated with their image, it's associated with their emotions, it's associated with their their convenience, right? For B2B buyers, they're different. They just want to make sure that everything that they buy is going to be consistent, is going to have good quality, right? Because a lot of decision buyers in the B2B are not exactly not always the owners. They're just procurement managers, or they are a project manager that is procuring a service. So with these people, the way they think is more about how reliable are you, money back guarantee, reliability, customer service. Okay, so your pitch to them is more about reliability and trust. So during this time of crisis, the way you communicate with these B2B customers will be about tradition, will be about history, will be your track record. Okay, so remember this. So, if you have helped clients through hard times, like Verity Consulting, we've helped clients through the 2009 crisis. A lot of our clients are still with us after 10 years because they remember how we supported them during the crisis. So think about, when was the last time your client had a really difficult time? It doesn't have to be a crisis. It could be, some sort of money issue. It could be some sort of cash flow issue. It could be some sort of marketing issue, or any sort of operational project problem, challenge. So think of that and think, how have you actually come in and supported them? And basically not remind them, but basically say, yes, you're a company that's been around for a long time. This is what you've done for companies. This is what you've done to help them solve problems and help them overcome challenges. So when you communicate to B2B, it's more in the area of establishing trust, establishing reliability. When you're communicating with B2C, it's different. It's more about, improving their aesthetics. Do they feel good about themselves when they purchase this product? And that's another thing I didn't cover during the webinar, but I thought I mentioned this. The trend is going to move towards sustainability. Okay, sustainability has been around for a long time. Some companies are doing that just to greenwash or to whatever, to PR away the things that they do. I mean, I'm not one to judge. As long as the ends are good, that's all it matters. Okay, so from this whole entire crisis, I've come across a lot of research and a lot of studies, and the reports are showing two biggest trends that are moving in the next future. Digitization, of course. So you need to digitize a lot of your products and services. You're going to make it very very accessible for people. Mass customization is going to be the key thing for digitization. So if you're looking at consumer products, mass customization, multi-channel, that's the way to go. With B2C, right, a lot of it has got to do with, like I said, collaboration, and partnering up with all the partners within the value chain. But more importantly, the emphasis on sustainability is big. The emphasis on sustainability is no longer going to be a competitive edge, it's going to be a necessity. If you don't have it, you're going to, we're already seeing that in the business. A lot of our clients were complaining that, people are using that as an excuse to drop the price down. Oh, you're not a sustainable company. So, so I would say sustainability is something that companies really need to look into. And also because the consumers are now more sensitive to what's going on around in the environment. This whole entire crisis has gotten people becoming more observant with the nature, with the kind of damage that we've done to the environment. So a lot of great things that came out from this crisis, right? So people remember this. And also don't forget, if your consumers are going to be the millennials, the Generation Z, these people are willing to switch brands. 60% of them are willing to switch brand if you have a good corporate social responsibility, if you have a good sustainability direction for the company, and what you do is going to be good for not just the environment, but also for the community. So I would say, thinking future, this will be something that you might want to really explore and emphasize if you haven't already. Yeah. Any other questions? I'm so glad so many people are still sticking around. So feel free to ask questions. Like I said, I'm more than happy to contribute while I'm here. Just feel free to pick my brain. Otherwise, Emmeline, do you have any other questions that you would like to raise? Oh, there are a few more questions coming up.
Time is almost up. Maybe we can just take one last question. So
okay, sure.
A few more questions that has been added to Q&A.
Okay, so diversity. Someone asked about diversity, or was it diversify?
How should you diversify?
Okay, we are a recruitment agency, and most of our clients have frozen the hiring, which resulted in cost cutting. More retrenchment will be coming ahead in the next few months. What would you recommend, or how would you think we should diversify? Okay, it's hard for me to give you any sort of prescriptive advice, especially if I don't really know the positioning of your business and I don't know who are your major clients and what industry you're serving. But I can say that even as an agency, even though things are being frozen more or less now, you see that right after in fact, even before this crisis ends, you see that there will be a lot of movement globally, a lot of movement in jobs. So you can either find yourself a niche in that, yeah, or you can diversify. But like I said, what do you want to diversify into? The way I would see it is, what are the most key concern of people now as an employer, right? So digitization. So if, say, for example, part of your business is about acquiring talents with that sort of coding background, that sort of technology background, digital background, you're going to be fine. But if, say, for example, you're looking at a more traditional industry, more traditional business, then again, ask your clients, talk to your best clients and say, what is it that you need now? Right? You're not trying to push any sale. You're just saying, I understand that you're freezing, but when things get back to normal, you probably need to restructure your business or restructure your employees or your talent acquisition. Every company is doing that, including our company. Even as a consultancy firm, we are reviewing this whole time. And I bet if our firm is doing that, a lot of companies are doing that. So when people are rethinking how they want to restructure their workforce, when they are rethinking how they want to repurpose or reskill their talents, what kind of service can you offer? So again, some of them are not just straightforward, like we introduce you an employee and then we get a cut. It will be more on the areas of how can you educate me as an employer on how to restructuring, or what kind of reskilling do I require? Future of work, digitization. Are you able to offer any sort of seminars and webinars for my workforce so that it can get me to think? So like I said, if things go really well for you in the normal times, during this crisis, is all going to really disrupt that status quo. So like I said, because this is a really sensitive time, so you can't do any hard selling. And if you do a bit of too much, you might turn people off. So the only way to do this, the only way you can keep in the top of your mind of your customers is to maintain that relationship, remind people of your services, remind people of your purpose and your vision, and more importantly, add value to people at the moment, right? So what value do you add? What kind of advice can you give people? So again, I do not know much about your agency business, but there must be some areas where you can contribute, that you can learn. I mean, you're on the front line when it comes to talent, global talent trends. So are there reports that you can share with your customers? Are there any information you can update with your customers that's going to be relevant to them? So I hope that answers the question.
Okay, I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today. Thank you, Sandy, for sharing so many practical tips and examples with the audience. We hope everyone has enjoyed the session and gotten great tips.
You're welcome.
We have quite a number of administrative questions. If you'd like to obtain a copy of the slides, please get in touch with the Verity Consulting team using the QR code or URL as shown on the screen now. We will also appreciate it if you could complete the feedback form and also share with us your thoughts on this webinar. So feel free to email Sandy for your questions if you cannot answer them today.
Yeah. So upon exiting this particular webinar, you'll be given a link to put in your feedbacks and your ratings for our session. So we are only as good as your feedback. So I welcome any sort of constructive criticism or any sort of positive ideas or any creative ideas on what you want to see in the future. And I look forward to staying in touch with all of you. Thank you very much for your time and good luck and stay safe, everyone.